Falls Holidays. tried to work that out. I don't have it set.
Then I looked at Rose Avenue and they were. Okay, we're not supposed to be up here again.
So, yeah, screening here, microphone up there.
My grandpa coming up here.
השמיים תפילת האדם, החול והים, רשרוש של המים, ברק השמיים תפילת האדם. O God, my God, I pray that these things never end. The sand and the sea, the rush of the waters, the crash of the heavens, the prayer of the heart. Our rabbis taught that there are three crowns: the crown of Torah, the crown of priesthood, and the crown of royalty. But they emphasize that the crown of a good name excels them all. In the book of Ecclesiastes says, Tov Shem Mishem and Tov, a good name is to be treasured above precious oil. Wealth and health, even life passes away, but a good name lives forever. It is this view that the Talmud teaches monuments need not be erected for the righteous. Their deeds are their memorials. Neil Rubnitz will be remembered and revered for the kindness he has shown and for the love he has given. For Neil is a shining example of what it means to be a mensch. And so we begin our service with the 121st Psalm, a psalm that bids us to look up to the mountains. For Neil was a source of uplift to his family and to his friends, and his goodness will be a permanent marker in their lives, not unlike the lofty peaks. Esain el hari, me'ain ayin yavo Ezri me'im Adonai oseh shamayim haaretz. I lift up my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help will come from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth. Al yitein lamot raglecha yanum shomrecha. God will not let your foot give way. Your guardian will not slumber. Hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael. Adonai shomrecha, Adonai tzilcha al yad yaminecha. Behold, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The Eternal is your keeper. Adonai is your shade at your right hand. Yomam hashemesh lo yakeka v'erech balayla. Adonai yishmorcha mikol ra yishmor et nafshecha. Adonai yishmor tzeitecha v'echa me'ata ve'ad olam. The sun shall not harm you by day, nor the moon at night. God will guard you from all harm. God will protect your being, now and forever. Mourning is the price we pay for having the courage to love others. And even in grief, we know that the wonder of human life is too complex and too magnificent to be memorialized in endless pain. The gifts of spirit our loved ones gave us cannot be measured or weighed, nor can they be lost or even tarnished by time. Even in our darkest hours, we know that some of Neil's light and his warmth will always be with us, bringing comfort and courage, and in the fullness of time, healing and peace. Death has summoned our beloved Neil Rubnitz. For his love which united us in life and which death cannot sever, for his companionship which we shared along life's path and which still continues through the tenderness of memory, and for the gifts of his heart and mind which brought us joy and happiness and now have become a precious heritage of the Spirit. For all these and more, we are thankful. In this time of mourning, we listen to the voice of our sacred scripture that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, binot deshet yabitzeni, al mei menuchot yinachaleni. Adonai is my shepherd, I shall not want. God makes me lie down in green pastures, leads me beside still waters, and restores my soul. You lead me in right paths for the sake of your name. Even when I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I shall fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You have set a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Eternal forever. Rabbi Alvin Fine wrote a beautiful poem that speaks to the nature of life and speaks to the journey that we're all on. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey a going, a growing from stage to stage, from childhood to maturity and youth to old age, from innocence to awareness and ignorance to knowing, from foolishness to discretion and then perhaps to wisdom, from weakness to strength or strength to weakness and often back again, from health to sickness and back we pray to health again, from offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, from grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies not at some high place along the way, but in having made the journey stage by stage. A sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning and death a destination, but life is a journey. One that Neil took with great dignity and love, and compassion for his fellow human beings, and deep and abiding love for his family. It's a sacred pilgrimage, made stage by stage to life everlasting. It's now a privilege to call upon Neil's dear wife, to call upon Dina, who will speak and then be followed by Neil's beloved daughter, Noah.
Thank you all for coming. I think this is one of the first times that Neil is on time. In this world of COVID and the pandemic, I'm so sorry that we cannot celebrate and remember Neil in the way that he deserves to be remembered, but I am overwhelmed with the amount of people who came to celebrate his life, and for that I am very thankful. I have stopped and started writing this eulogy so many times. I recently saw a movie where the thesis was to make sure that you notice the collateral beauty. That got me to think about the beauty of Neil. He was larger than life to all that knew him, but was quite reserved and kept things close to his chest at home. Neil was a thinker and had the capacity and memory for people, places, and experiences. He was also impulsive, because as soon as a thought or something about something or someone entered his head, he needed to act on it immediately by calling the person to confirm or deny what he had heard or saw. Neil was my GPS as I'm directionally challenged, especially when I was evaluating children all over the city. I would call him and tell him the address, and he would tell me the cross street, and my travel to the destination was spot on instead of me traveling in circles. Neil and I love to shop, especially for bargains. In fact, on one of our dates, we hit every TJ Maxx and Marshall's in and around Milwaukee in one evening 31 years ago. I knew then that I was hooked. We would finish each other's sentences and say almost the same thing at the same time. It was kind of crazy cool. We met on a blind date June 2nd, 1989, and by the end of the summer, we knew how we felt about each other. He was 42 years old, and I kept asking myself, why me? I mean, Neil was a man about town, closing bars, having a tab at Elsa's when it was cash only, and was part of that elite club that hung out there after hours. Everyone knew Neil. In fact, after our first date to hear Midori at the PAC, we went to Elsa's, and I felt like he was Tony Romero from Saturday Night Fever. Everyone knew him and said hello, including the bartenders who knew his drink. Coming into the Rubnitz family was an interesting transition. Neil's mother, Harriet of blessed memory, was an incredible cook, and I know that he did not marry me for my culinary skills. I think Neil had one or two things that I made that he loved, beef tenderloin being one of them. Chuck of blessed memory was also a man about town, and I think that is how Neil learned to be a schmoozer, a macher, and a mensch. He also taught Neil to show respect to everyone, and I think that is why he has such a good relationship with his tenants. His sister Diane of blessed memory, whose Hebrew name is Dina, could not believe that Neil finally settled down. There's a picture in our wedding album with her arms in an almost victory V, and I can still hear her yelling with delight, "I can't believe he's finally married." I'm so honored to share the same initials as her, DSR, Diane Sue Rubnitz and Dina Sharon Rubnitz. As Neil was beginning to decline due to this horrid brainstem glioma, I had the beauty of discussing our 30-year marriage. The good times, the bad times, the ugly times. I asked him why did he marry me. After all, he was the man about town and knew many, many women that way. Neil told me that I was a better person than he was, and he was proud to be marrying up. I asked him what that meant, and he told me that I had an education, was good at what I did as a speech-language pathologist, was sure of myself, and I was able to handle a situation with finesse and class, something that he admired in me, and told me that just recently until he couldn't speak. Collateral beauty. I asked Neil what he wanted when his time came, and he said he wanted to go without any pomp or circumstance. No big deals, he said. But my friends said this was not happening, and I cannot thank them enough for making us both feel so special and so loved. I am so humbled, and words cannot even describe how I feel towards all of you. The delicious meals, walking Gracie, the conversations, the check-ins, making sure I always had a glass of wine in hand, helping Neil when I clearly could not lift 190 pounds of dead weight, being there to assist his medications before I had 24-hour care, as well as making sure he was taken care of as he made his journey to the funeral home. Neil was an impeccable dresser, and when I would compliment him, his response would be, "I know, and I should." He was also obsessed with his losing his hair, and probably kept Rogaine in business. Memories of him driving with the window down and him looking into the side view mirror to make sure his hair was still in place. He was so concerned about this plot being so close to the street and told me so during one of his last lucid conversations. I told him that he loved to cruise down the street with the window open, checking his hair. He said, "I guess you're right. It will remind me that I still look good." And you should, Neil. The early morning that Neil died, I had a dream that I was in a tunnel going through a door, and then walking to the next door, when the caregiver ran up the stairs to tell me that Neil had passed away. That next door to my dream was to Olam Haba, the world to come, and he made me stop from going through that door. Dreams have an odd way of being an alternate reality. He wanted me to know that he was walking through that door. The world lost a Yenta in a good way, a Macher, a Mensch, and a wonderful loving husband, father, and man. Such collateral beauty. His memory will certainly be a blessing, and he will be so missed and loved by everyone that had the privilege of knowing him. I will continue to look for the collateral beauty that I know is around me, because we talked about you leaving me hints of your presence. Starting now, Neil. I love you so much. Rest in peace. Your memory will be and is a blessing.
I hope you all can hear me. Stand by. Thank you everyone who came near and far to share this special, sacred, though virtual space with my family today. We are grateful for the outpouring of love and compassion we have received. I believe my dad is smiling down on all of us, cherishing the love that you are expressing for my dad and our family during these unprecedented times in our lives. Our nation is currently living in a fragmented world. My dad was well aware of this barely organized chaos. He also voted before his time of passing. In the midst of all that was and is tragic and off-kilter, my dad would say 2020 has empowered us to face the true colors, those we see in the mirror, and the often distorted and discoloration of the news around us. From Kobe Bryant's death to George Floyd, COVID-19, fires burning everywhere. Our world, this world, is in a state of disruption. And my dad would say, this is the time to see the good in people and lean into a pandemic of love. My dad would want us to demonstrate empathy for ourselves and others. Look at yourself before you look at anyone else, he would say. Now, this may have included the occasional look in the mirror to admire his hair and his signature mustache. Jonah, Dad is impressed with your new, what I call Sacha Baron Cohen stash, and he kind of looks like Dad. I don't think we need a third. But his strength, compassion, and yes, humor for ourselves and others. Last week, I was back in LA shooting a project when I felt the need to lean into the individual sitting next to me. This individual happens to be a 2-time Grammy Award-winning artist, and we were shooting a music-sports hybrid production. For those who don't know, rule number 1 in the industry is you don't talk to your talent, as if they're not your friend. You are not there to make conversation, and yet nothing levels the playing field more than knowing you're one call away from being called home to say goodbye to your dad. I turned to the talent, admittedly vulnerable yet brave state of mind. I asked him, I said, "Have you ever felt broken?" He paused. After all, I did come out of left field, and he said, "Yeah, before my first record deal." He quickly looked back at me and asked if I was broken. I said, "Yes, I am. I am broken." He responded and said, "If I can give you any advice, healing and love will find you." I think my dad truly believed his healing and love would find me and help me through this. Less than 24 hours later, I boarded the plane home. Dad was losing the physical battle with brain cancer. His body would quit, but his mind and spirit never quit. My dad would say quitting is not the answer, but rather there exists an opportunity for a shift. He imparted this wisdom to us in word and in deed. My dad lived well with cancer for over 15 years of undiagnosis before he was indeed diagnosed. Cancer ultimately took his life, but only after 4 years where he battled with wisdom, dignity, all while caring for his family, my mom, Jonah, and me. And of course, though he would tell our dog to get off the bed, he gave Gracie some lovin' too. My dad didn't quit the fight. He chose hope and told us to live in the present while also focusing on our future. Over the last 7 months, I was lucky enough to drive my dad to work. We had family dinner every night. We watched Sunday night football religiously, staying up until I caught him snoring on the couch. Sometimes I'd watch my dad sleeping peacefully and would think about how tired he must be. My dad was 72 years young when he died, 49 years old when I was born. And let me be sure to tell you, I checked that math twice. I have wonderful memories of when I was likely the one napping and tired, and he was the vibrant, fun, bicycle riding, bad driving, I'll tell you more on that later, but great sledder dad, flipping the sled over and landing on his stomach at the bottom. Laughing, my dad, Jonah, and I would go back to the top for another 4 or 5 runs together before Altera for some hot cider. What began as Dairy Queen dates when I was 7 later became the tradition of sledding and hot cider at Altera, then coffee dates at what later became Colectivo. August was our last coffee date at Colectivo. We didn't talk about cancer much. We talked about not being afraid and that he was comfortable knowing that there was an end. We reminisced about his life and talked about what would become of mine. He insisted I return to LA and pursue my dreams. On October 7th, I asked my dad, "When would you like me to come back and see you?" In his nonchalant way, he said, "For my funeral." On another occasion, he told me to come back for the celebration. I paused and thought to myself, this is a celebration? I'll go with celebration and share the following. My dad always saw the opportunity to celebrate life. His favorite song was "I've Got You Under My Skin" by Frank Sinatra, who wrote, "I would sacrifice anything, come what might, for the sake of having you near, in spite of a warning voice that comes in the night and repeats how it yells in my ear." My dad was a yeller and had what he even called a trucker mouth. And what I hear in his voice right now is, "Come on, Noah, just finish this up." He never wanted to see us cry. In May, when he told me he might not make it to my wedding, he looked at me and said, "It's going to be okay. Don't worry about me, I've lived a good life." He would shake his head and say, "I'm fine." Keeping it together, that was my dad, a source of light and strength. Even in the last few weeks, cancer did not win against my dad's spirit or outlook on life. My dad showed vulnerability, not weakness, and that was strength. He was the most selfless, kind, and loving individual, using his feelings as his GPS. And now, as it relates to GPS and driving, my dad should not have had his driver's license. He told me I shouldn't have passed my driver's test. Yeah, that's also the dad who said as I slowed down at the yellow light, coming to a perfect stop, "Noah, yellow means YOLO. You only live once." And now, there will be many firsts without my dad. My life, my new normal without my dad. I'll manage them one at a time, without my dad physically at my side, though I know he is always with me. I watched the Wisconsin-Illinois game Friday without my dad. A first. Wisconsin-Nebraska is hopefully next Saturday. He won't be sitting next to me for the second time. However, he was and forever is my Badger best friend, and likely the reason I do what I do for a living. Dad was the biggest Wisconsin football fan, and likely the reason why I bleed red and white for the Wisconsin Badgers. 4 Rose Bowls for my dad. I was lucky to see the Wisconsin-Oregon game with him back in 2011. We talked football, a little Wisconsin basketball, day, night, fall, winter, spring, and summer. He always wanted to be in the know, hear the next juiciest football news, or ask why the Wisconsin basketball team couldn't make it past the Sweet 16. I always told him, call them up and ask. And with his response, they don't want my complaints. My dad lived life with a hug and a push. He wanted us, those he loved most, to be better than the day before. November 2016, right after his diagnosis, he told Jonah and I, if there's one thing I will remember at the end of this, is you love what you do and you love harder for the people supporting you along the way. I'm in sports because of him. Jonah will return to Madison next week because of him. My dad reminds us, all of us, those he loved most. Your who always comes before your do. Thank you so much for hearing and listening, but I do want to share a few more thoughts with you before we lay my dad to rest. My dad always taught us there was a difference between hearing someone and actively listening. He wanted me to listen and laugh at his stupid dad jokes, even though he would laugh the hardest. I will listen to these jokes over and over again now in my mind because he's resting now. Somewhere listening to me or to us, listening to our words and everything we have to say and yet to be. As I walk on a football field or receive my first Oscar, it is now led with a new purpose. It is all owed to you, Dad. And for the 100th time, I promise to make you proud. As we leave this space today, I know his love, selflessness is instilled within all of us. Upon arriving at the end of each book of Torah, we say, Chazak, Chazak, v'nit chazek. Be strong, and may we be strengthened. Every time I speak these 3 words, I am reminded of all those who give us strength and encourage each of us on our own journey to be the best we can be. And that is what my dad wants for all of us. Although a chapter in a book is closing, my dad will be continuing his life with all of us as we enter the next chapter with so much strength. To say strong, my dad was also a mensch. A mensch among family and friends, a smiling face, and especially a mensch in the office. Each day, 2 eggs, a piece of toast, and that off-brand I can't believe it's not butter. Then off to the office where he would turn on the copy machine and check the mail. He had a routine and liked things a certain way, inclusive of how he treated people and how he saw the world. My dad lived with the glass half full. And yes, I'm also talking about filling his glass with that damn Walmart sparkling water. If he could raise kiddush with it, he would. My dad always made sure everyone was eating at the table before he was. And I mean most of the time. His selflessness never went unnoticed. Now I imagine he's at the table with his parents and sister Diane, drinking his Walmart water and eating chopped liver and Harriet's matzo ball soup. There is a song I've been listening to these past couple weeks called Godspeed by an R&B artist named Frank Ocean. It reminds me of our purpose today. He writes, I will always love you how I do. Let go of a prayer for you. Just a sweet word, the table is prepared for you. On my way home last Wednesday, I texted my dad on the plane to say goodbye. I said, I love you, Dad. Everything is going to be okay. As I board the plane in the next few days going back to sunny Los Angeles, California, I am met with a new purpose. I want to remind you all of my dad's biggest wish. You should love what you do and you will never work a day in your life. I want you all to remember to fill your daily glass with so much love, compassion, positivity, and most importantly, with no regret. Put your who always before your do and understand that my dad would want us leaving here better than we came, celebrating his life amongst our grief. Dad, I love you to the moon and beyond, and may your memory be a blessing.
Dina, Noah, and Jonah, thank you for these beautiful and loving words. I'm certain that Neil is still smiling down on all of you with that same love and affection that he did in life. When we say Chazak, Chazak, looking at Neil's dear children, I can see where his strength came from and where it continues as well. It's moving that Neil was a descendant of the Vilna of Gaon, a great and learned rabbi. And the Vilna, as he was known, was heavily influenced by the Maharal of Prague. The Vilna loved life and committed himself to the acts of living. And that passion came through in the letter he wrote to his family on his journey to Eretz Yisrael. It is legendary for the love he espoused as he ached for his family, and was written with tremendous tenderness. And if memory serves, the Vilna once passed on a story of the Maharal that I believe is meaningful in this moment. The Maharal, late in his life, knew that he was dying, and he found a passage in the books of law which said that while a person was learning Torah, they could not die. And for 3 days and 3 nights he studied without stopping, preserving his life for that period of time. And after 3 days and 3 nights, his granddaughter brought the great sage a rose. And as he bent down to pick up the rose, he stopped learning, and the angel of death came upon him. Now, many have interpreted this story, but the interpretation that I believe is most meaningful is that death comes as the natural end of life, and for some it comes too soon. But the rose is not a symbol of death, nor the child. Rather, the rose is a symbol of life, and feeling the love of a child, that is living. And if living is the natural order and leads us to inevitably pass from this earth, we must all still grasp the beautiful rose of life and not let it go. Neil lived a life of beauty, a life where he reached for what was good and what was right, a life that held the beauty of his children and his wife and his friends and his community, and saw the goodness in them all, for they were his roses in bloom. And so for one who held the flower in his hand, we have come to bring him honor and to bring comfort to all who will miss him dearly. We especially extend our condolences to you, Dina. You shared so much together with Neil, from the first moments of friendship when you were set up on that blind date over 30 years ago. It's meaningful that your date was preceded by a long talk on the telephone that lasted for 2.5 hours, and that neither of you wanted to end the conversation, but did for fear that you would say it all before you were together in person. It's also meaningful that on those first dates, that the friendship between you grew, and for Neil in particular, that was truly important, so that on July 3rd, the two of you would see the fireworks together, and you both knew that what you had was truly special. And when you were married, the words Re'im Ahuvim were chanted. It's these words that articulate that the two of you are beloved companions, through which you held each other close and held each other up, no matter what. Even when he proposed to you in the home of your dear parents after you stepped in muck, it was a testament to the way Neil knew that though life can be filled with challenge, a misstep or a ruined shoe, that the two of you could build something sacred and beautiful together, even amidst the difficulties of life. And you did. And when you look at the home and the family you created together, you can see the goodness even amidst the challenges of the world. It's meaningful that your parents had the bottle of champagne waiting as a reminder of the sweetness of that moment and the sweetness of time. Neil met life with a brilliance that you were often in awe of. The way his mind could work out any equation, the way he could navigate the streets and the world and indeed life. The way he could write a card to you, not unlike the Vilna, that was compassionate and loving and filled with his soulful qualities that brought you to tears and was filled with gratitude. There were many sides to Neil, many ways he experienced the world and the world experienced him, but these tender sides were ones he reserved for those most precious to him. And Dina, I know that these months have been among the most painful of your life, but the steadfast devotion that you showed Neil, the way you took charge and brought comfort, is a testament to your love. And the devotion Neil showed you throughout those 30 years is a testament to his. And Noah and Jonah, it's clear that you were Neil's pride and joy. And these words that he called you, his pride and joy. And when we think about the deep meaning of those words, and we think about who each of you are and who you're becoming, we can all attest to the view of your father. It's important for every child to know they are loved, and your father made no secret of that. But Neil also provided you with an example and lessons of life that you'll internalize. Neil wanted you to be happy and to chart the course of your life as you so beautifully mentioned, Noah, to find work that wasn't work because you loved it. Neil was also the type of person who was reflective and instilled that in you as well. That in the inevitable conflicts that exist, you should make sure that you're looking at yourself and that there is strength and humility. And Jonah, when you played baseball with your dad, the games that you played or in watching the Brewers play, these were opportunities for your dad to build character. You weren't just learning to catch and throw and bat, you were learning to overcome adversity and to have a passion for that which you love. And he wanted to share his passions with each of you, taking you to watch his beloved Badgers, taking you to Rose Bowls, bleeding red and white, as Noah said, even when the teams failed to achieve. Neil was no fair weather fan, not about his Badgers and not about the people he cared for. The pride and joy that Neil felt that each of you represent the third generation of Wisconsin students is very special. And there's so much of your dad in you. You have his passion for sports, his ability to know so many people with a Jewish geographic ability that was truly outstanding. You have his sense of humor and love of a good punchline. And you have his earnest selflessness and forgiving nature. You have his ability to observe and take it all in. But most important and most precious, you have his loving nature. All the memories and experiences you had with Neil and all the lessons he taught you are incorporated into your very being, and they will continue to live on in you. And now you represent his greatest legacy on this earth, for you will share the stories of Neil's life and guarantee that he will live on. Though nothing can replace Neil in the lives of his loved ones, the presence of so many of you here today, is in person or spiritually present over the internet, is a sign of the love and respect that you have for him. And I'm certain it brings Neil's family comfort. It's a loving testimony of the place in which you held him and his family in your hearts, and the meaning all of your lives had intertwined with his. Neil truly was a good friend, and he was a friend who cared. Neil lived a life dedicated to family and friendship of 72 years, 4 times high, reflective of the 4 members of his home that he cared for more than anything, reflective of where he built his life. There was so much that made Neil who he was. Born into a family for whom he was devoted, he honored his family, and it was so tremendously difficult for him to be the last of the home in which he grew. And though he might have felt as though he was an orphan later in life, perhaps that's also why he cultivated such a loving community around him. He was active as a young man in AZA and felt his Jewish identity strongly throughout his life. He was athletic and played club tennis. And Neil had an adventurous spirit. After graduation, he traveled to Europe on a 2-week itinerary, and it grew into 4 months, spending time in Italy where he spoke the language fluently, until he inevitably had to return to begin work in his family's business. In his work, Neil was good to his tenants. He empathized with their struggles and would be flexible when he had to be, but also fair and firm when he had to be as well. Neil loved to help people and loved to know people. He knew when to be strong and he knew when to be soft. And there were many sides to Neil, beloved by his family and respected by his peers. He was truly a mensch. All of you here today will feel the void Neil's passing leaves in your lives, but he will never truly be gone. You'll remember him lying in the hot summer sun by the JCC pool. You'll remember his distinctive mustache. You'll remember the fineness of the dignity in which he dressed, matched by the fineness and the dignity of his inner being. But mostly you'll remember the words and acts of love he bestowed upon you. Neil will live on in the unique memories you have of him and in the stories of his life that you'll continue to share. In that way, he has truly gained immortality. For Neil grasped hold of the beauty of life. May we always do the same. Zichrono livracha. May the name and memory of Neil Rubnitz therefore abide among us as an eternal blessing. And may the source of peace and comfort to all who mourn among us. And let us say, Amen. Adonai natan v'Adonai lekach yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. May the memory of Neil Rubnitz endure among us as a blessing. In your own time, O God, when we too are called to enter eternity, may we leave this life secure in the faith that in your light we shall see light. In life and in death we cannot go where you are not, and where you are, hope endures. Sustained by this assurance, we invoke your name, Almighty God. Please rise now for El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Amse Menucha Nuchona, Tachat Konfei Ashchina, Im Kiroshim, Utehorim, Kezohar Harakia Masirim, Et Nishma Nisan Chaim Ben Zalman Veziva Shalach Lolamo, Bal Harachamim Yastirehu, Beseter Kanfav Lolamim, Vitzro Bitzro Chaim En Ishmato, Adonai Hunachalato, V'yanuach b'shalom al mishkavo, v'nomar Amen. Compassionate God, eternal spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Neil Rubnitz, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let him find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let his soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is his inheritance. May he rest in peace, and let us say, Amen. At this time, I'd like to invite you to place some earth from Jerusalem upon the casket, and then we'll be lowering the casket in just a moment. Gonna sprinkle that on top of the casket.
On top, it's already open.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher yatzar etchem b'tzalmo. We praise you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who forms us in a divine image. V'zal v'chukel etchem badin v'hemit etchem badin v'yodea mispar kulchem badin v'atid lachazir u'achiotechem badin, who nourishes us in a divine image and sustains us in your goodness, causes all of us to die yet implants immortal life. Baruch atah Adonai Dayan ha'emet. We praise you, O God of truth. Atah gibor le'olam Adonai mechayim eitim atah rav lehoshia. Mechokel chayim bechesed. Mechayim eitim berachamim rabim. Somech noflim berofei cholim u'matir asurim. Mekayem u'menato lishenei afar. Mi chamocha bal giborot umi domelach. Melech memit umchayeh u'matzmiach Yeshua. V'ne'eman atah le'chayot metim. Eternal is your might, O God, all life is your gift. Great is your power to save. With love you sustain the living, and with great compassion you give life to all. You send help to the falling and healing to the sick. Bring freedom to the captive and keep faith with those who sleep in the dust. Baruch atah Adonai noten b'tochenu chayei olam. We praise you, O God, who implants eternal life within us. Al mikamo yavo b'shalom. May Neil come to his eternal home in peace. take this time now of reflection as we remember Neil. on the phone together. That's something that we want to do. The act of helping to fill the grave is seen as a final act of kavod hamet, as a final respect and honor to Neil. And though it's a terribly difficult act, it's helpful to think of this as tucking Neil into his eternal sleep with a blanket of earth. For those of you who wish to perform this important mitzvah, you may disinfect before using the disinfectant on the table that's next to it. And this act is fully committed when you take at least 3 shovelfuls of earth and then return the shovel to the mound so that the next person can completely fulfill this sacred obligation. And we ask that we all follow after Neil's dear family, who will go first, and that we continue to have social distancing even when we form these lines, that we maintain 6 feet between us. You can, yeah.
My father wants to do that at the very end before they come over.
Your
So
father wants to, I'm sorry.
he wants to put some, he wants to do,
Of course.
so
So why
after,
don't we wait till everybody goes?
right, that's right, I'm
And
just
then
saying.
we'll do that, and then we'll do cottage.
Then we'll do cottage.
Yeah.
So, no, I said, he said I wanted, his dad wants to come do that too, he'll do it, and then we'll say cottage. She's a crazy woman. Hopefully that's not on.
we're going to reassemble now for Kadisha Tov for the mourner's Kaddish. Mourner's Kaddish. We're going to reassemble for mourner's Kaddish. Yep. And your dad is coming? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So we turn now to the words of Kadisha Tom, the mourner's Kaddish. Yit gadal v'yit kadash shmei Rabbah, v'amad yivrach yiruteh v'yamlich malchuteh, v'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam v'lomei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitalev v'yitalal shmei dekudesha b'richu, v'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, v'amiran b'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, Amen. And now as Dina and Noah and Jonah return to their car and pass through you, I invite you to say these words to me, repeating them, to Neil's dear immediate family. If you want, you can go back to your car unless you want to just stay. If you would repeat in the Hebrew and the English after me, Hamakom, Yinachem, Edchem, Betoch, Sha'ar, Avelei, Sion, Yerushalayim. And in English, may God console you among the mourners of Zion and Jerusalem. Now go forth in peace to life.